So breaking news, we finally figured out Kamala's agenda for America. It's mostly Trump's, but with like joy and vibes. The show starts now. Due to the fact Kamala still has not put out a legit policy plan on her own website or elsewhere, and since she still has not done a formal interview or press conference, we've been left trying to decipher what exactly it is she would do as president. You know, it's like the Da Vinci Code. If the Da Vinci Code were communist, or a lottery scratch-off ticket, or a box of chocolates, we don't really know what we're gonna get. Well, except for the few things she's ripped off of Trump, of course. First, it was no tax on tips. Then she jacked J.D. Vance's child tax care credit increase. And now, oh lordy, this is the best one yet. Kamala wants to build the wall.
She took on drug cartels and jailed gang members for smuggling weapons and drugs across the border. As vice president, she backed the toughest border control bill in decades.
So while Kamala isn't outright saying she will finish the border wall, she's not outright saying anything on anything, but she did vow to resurrect the so-called bipartisan border bill. And while that bill is mostly trash, it does include funding for the border wall. Who knows, maybe she hasn't read it, but it does require hundreds of millions of unspent funds to be used on border wall construction. And 2019 Kamala is going to be very pissed about this.
This issue is about a vanity project for this president.
Right.
And it is a problem of his own making.
Right.
And listen, when I travel this country, folks have plenty enough problems that they need their president to focus on,
You know what?
instead of a wall.
On the subject of transnational gangs, let's be perfectly clear. The president's medieval vanity project is not going to stop them. We cannot continue to have an administration and a president of the United States who puts his vanity projects ahead of the needs of the people of our country.
Let me be very clear. I'm not going to vote for a wall under any circumstances, and I do support border security. And if we want to talk about that, let's do that.
It was a vanity project, but now I guess it's her vanity project? Well, here to help us decipher this latest change is former Obama Press Advance Director and Press Advance podcast host, Johanna Maska. It's great to talk to you. I'm so glad that I can have somebody on the left help me figure out what Kamala's policy positions are, because a lot of us on the right are a little stumped. So you got to tell me, do you believe that Kamala Harris now supports a border wall?
Tomi, I love being with you always. And, you know, obviously we've got a new candidate. She's rolling out new policies. What she said is that she's going to sign the bipartisan border security bill that was negotiated with Senate hawks, with border hawks that said that they wanted to continue the wall. She said she's going to sign that. And my question is, what's ever going to be enough? Because honestly, Tomi, I would love if Trump would adopt some of the Democrats' plans. I would love if he would adopt Medicare for all. I would love if he would say that he would sign protections for abortion access nationwide. And so my question is, you know, I'm seeing all of this about stealing my plan, which was actually like, you know, the plan that a little Iowa congressman was walking around with his little Lego set of a wall, you know, a long time ago. Stealing my plan is not what I care about in politics. It's about the outcome and the legislation that gets passed. So the fact that Democrats are now talking about a border wall, I just don't understand why Republicans are so upset about that. She's saying she would sign the legislation that's pending that Donald Trump has said he doesn't want to see done under a Democrat.
Okay, so here's my question on this, and that's a valid point that you make. Everybody is allowed to change their mind. Everybody is allowed to say, hey, listen, you know, the situation is so bad due to the Biden-Harris administration that now we have to do something a little more drastic to take care of our border security and our immigration crisis. I would respect that. I think the problem is this. We haven't heard from Kamala why she's changed her position on so many things. We haven't heard from her directly. We've heard statements from staffers or aides about her changing policy positions on an electric vehicle mandate, on fracking, on potentially a border wall construction finish, but we haven't heard her tell us that she's changed her position. So then a lot of us are left wondering exactly what her position is now and why she's changed it. Do you think that's fair for us to wonder?
The Democratic National Convention is where she addressed and said that she would sign the border bill. There's going to be a host of policy proposals that are rolled out. Before that, she had rolled out some of her economic proposals. Obviously, her getting to the position of running for president late in the game, she's got a lot that she needs to tell the American people. I understand this desire for an interview. I want her to do tons of interviews. I want to hear what she has to say. I want to see this debate.
Do you really want to hear from her? Because you would be one of the only Democrat strategists or spokespeople who want Kamala to be talking, because I've heard a number of them say she doesn't necessarily have to, and maybe it's better for her not to. Strategically, it's better to keep her away from cameras and questions and interviews. That seems to have been the strategy, and I'm not just pulling that out of thin air. I mean, she hasn't done one, and I understand that the time has been shortened by function of Democrats getting rid of their original candidate, but every day is an opportunity, as you know better than I, to be in front of press. Every day, every moment is an opportunity, and she has not taken any of those moments, and that's got to be frustrating for people like you who want her to talk.
Well, look, thank God we changed the candidate, because Joe Biden had a difficult time conveying what he was going to do at the first debate. And I am going to be the first to admit that. I wish, Tomi, that we had a politics of the moment in which our elected leaders would address press, not just those who are friendly to them, but all press regularly. I wish we had a moment in which our local newspapers, our local reporters were there on every campaign stop. And it wasn't just this national group that gets very comfortable with a candidate and will, go at them, but at the same time wants access. There's dynamics that need to shift here. Totally, for both candidates, regardless of who wins this election, I would say some press dynamics need to shift. The Democratic strategists who are saying that she should not address the press are basically using the playbook that's actually, it's similar to what Donald Trump has done. I mean, he has done interviews with other members of the press. He rarely answers a question, but it's similar in the sense of they're trying to entice their base only to go to the polls. They're not necessarily trying to reach across the aisle and respect and power include, bring more people to the table. They're trying to get their base energized and make sure that they do absolutely nothing that would squash that enthusiasm. I think on the other side, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance have stepped in it when they've gone, and done interviews. And so has it worked for them all the time? I mean, J.D. Vance has been very available. I'm not sure that has actually helped him.
Do you give him credit, though? I mean, love him or hate him. Do you give him credit? Because he goes on all the Sunday morning programs. Donald Trump has done interviews with every major outlet. He sat down for town halls with CNN. Kamala Harris, we're going to get to this because I have a lot of questions. Kamala Harris won't do an interview by herself with even CNN. So that's... Okay, so... Yes, go ahead.
The process post-convention, you normally do the first interview with your running mate. Look, she's got a narrow window to introduce herself and what the administration would be to the public.
Aren't we a little sick of her introducing herself, though? Like, I don't really care if she wants Tim Walz to eat tuna mayonnaise tacos. I'm kind of sick of that at this point, and I would assume that Democrats are as well. This whole get to know us hokey song and dance, that might have been cute like day one. Yeah, we
want to know the policy. I agree with you. I want to know the policy. The interesting thing that I was following with some of the J.D. Vance's most recent interviews is I actually think that there's a lot that are both parties are saying that is different, and evaluating how we get there is what I wanted to do. So JD Vance is talking about manufacturing, bringing it back to America. His concerns, obviously, he initially was against Trump. He had concerns about the tariffs. Now he is for those tariffs. He is for bringing manufacturing back through tariffs. The Democrats, talked about in our problem, Galesburg, Illinois, we lost Maytag. So I watched President Obama in 2004 address the Democratic National Convention and talk about the need to bring some of these jobs back, to bring manufacturing back to America. And their plan was this Inflation Reduction Act, which has a lot of incentives to bring manufacturing back. And in some cases, it has worked. They've got a whole host of places in which they're magnet spaces, essentially, where they are bringing manufacturing back. But it hasn't worked for Galesburg, Illinois. So I think these are the kinds of debates that we should be having. We shouldn't be talking about whether JD Vance is wearing eyeliner or, whether Tim Walz likes a spicy taco. We should actually be talking about policy. Now, I am hearing some of that from the Democrats and some of that from the Republicans. It's not always as robust as you and I may want to hear their plans, but that may have more to do with when the media even gets a question, they're asking about JD Vance's eyeliner and or spicy tacos and whether Tim Walz, uses spices.
Well,
I'll tell
you this.
It's ridiculous.
If Fox News, and I'm not even talking about our opinion hosts, I'm talking about Bret Baier, Martha McCallum, I don't even care. Pick a Democrat. I don't pick Jessica Tarloff. I don't care. But if they had a chance to talk to Kamala or Tim and she made herself available, I can guarantee you they wouldn't be asking about spicy tacos or anything of that nature. They would be asking her about her own record in her own words, because I don't think it is sufficient for her campaign or her staffers to put out these statements about where she stands and not hear it from her. Another flip-flop on the electric vehicle mandate. We know Kamala Harris was a sponsor of the Green New Deal. She was all in. She wants to end fossil fuels. She wants to end vehicles that are fueled by fossil fuels. She wanted that by 2025, a year away. So now her campaign is saying that she no longer believes in that, but I haven't heard from her. So what are we supposed to believe? Kamala 4 years ago or Kamala's staffers in statements today?
So first on the Bret Baier, I would like it if Bret Baier does a sit down with Kamala Harris. Absolutely. And he is fair. I've worked with him. I think he's a great journalist. I wish that there would be more fair and balanced news, both more, left-leaning. I'd say Martha McCallum certainly leans more right. Bret Baier does too, right? In every place, asking really tough questions. So first there. Whether she's going to do that in these 10 weeks, she probably sees no advantage to doing that. And that's the problem with our politics and with our media cycles, is that these candidates don't see the advantage of doing that. On the EV mandate, here's what I'd say is, in any scenario, we need to look at all new kinds of technologies because we are going to run out of fossil fuels. So you're already seeing companies invest in new technologies. I mean, here we had a big hydrogen wave. There was, Arnold Schwarzenegger was a big fan of hydrogen. Well, there's not enough pumping stations. And so you've got people lined up for hours for hydrogen. We've got to figure out what that's going to be. I mean, Elon Musk invested very heavily in electric vehicles, believed that this was going to be the future. Is it going to help to put and mandate nationwide? I mean, we're already seeing the problems in California of a mandate because you can't meet that demand, certainly not with all of the additional electric that we are taking up because of heat waves, because of all of the necessity that we're putting. I mean, we're saying don't have a gas stove. So that means we're going to have more stoves that are electric. So we've got to do this in a smart way. I think that is absolutely a conversation that should be had by Democrats and Republicans. In general, I think banning is, it rarely ends up working. Incentivizing is what Democrats tend to do. Incentivizing when you're using government dollars, that means the taxpayer is paying for it. Should we be paying for these things? I think we should debate all of these things.
Yeah, probably shouldn't be paying for things that nobody wants or that large amount of the population does not want. There's some people that would love to drive an electric vehicle. A lot of rich people love to drive Teslas. That's great. Your average person can't afford a Tesla. So that's a big part of the problem. And a lot of people that can't afford electric vehicles, if they can afford a cheaper electric vehicle, they live in an apartment complex that doesn't have a charging station, as you well know in California. So a lot of problems here. I just want Kamala to be honest. If she is in fact a progressive, if she is in fact an ultra radical liberal, then just tell us what your policies are and let the American people decide. But this whole bait and switch with the candidate and then bait and switch with the policies, I don't think she's being straight with the American people. They can't make an educated decision. That's bothersome to a lot of us who just wish Kamala would tell us who she is. And I'm not talking about the joy and the happy and, you know, what she likes to eat. I'm talking about who she is policy wise. And so I'm asking you too, with this big CNN interview, I mean, she's doing one, the last ditch effort to get one in before the end of the month, which she promised to do. But she's got Tim Walz with her. And for me, I'm wondering why she needs that security blanket. If she's this tough, badass woman, why does she need Tim Walz next to her to do an interview on CNN?
It's just by virtue of it being the first interview after the convention. She has a running mate. That is actually standard operating procedure. You watched Donald Trump and J.D. Vance do an interview together.
Nothing about this
she
is
should
standard.
never need.
Yeah, but when you've got 100 days, when you're swapped in 100 days, early voting starts in about a month. And I know that the standard thing after the convention, well, the convention was over last week. The standard thing would have been do an interview on Monday by yourself or do an interview with Tim on Monday. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, do an interview. And then next week, do as many interviews as possible. But we're getting one, and she needs Tim there.
Well, or before the convention, do a press conference, which I would have supported wholly. What I'm saying is this is the problem with the politics of our moment, is that she doesn't see an advantage of that. And honestly, probably Donald Trump wouldn't either if he would actually evaluate what he needs to do, which is get his base to the polls. If he wants to win in Michigan, he's got to get his base. He's got to make sure every single one of them get to the polls. This is not an election, and this is what's troubling to me. This is not an election in which people think that there's this massive amount of undecided voters. Like there's not a huge population out there that hasn't already been like, I'm leaning Trump or I'll never vote for Trump again in my life. Like that's where we are. And so what they see is the advantage is going after their base every single day with these videos that they're cutting up of their conventions, with everything like that. So I would love us to get back to a situation in which both candidates, and hopefully even more candidates, we could get to a place where we have multiple parties where they are grilled on all of these actual substantive issues. But the question is, would people click on that? That's the other trouble that I see, is you have really detailed reports that are put out that people don't actually review. So it's like, are we living in a world where it's the problem of the press, or it's the problem of we're not asking for all of this information, which again, I want to see. And I do have all sorts of questions about how Elon Musk built Tesla on the back of, taxpayer incentives, how he built SpaceX on the back of incentives, government funding. These are some of the companies that have been wholly subsidized by the government. So it's kind of rich now to see Elon Musk say, he's anti some of this government involvement, and he's picking, who he thinks is going to win. And I guess I have skepticism of any business leader doing that. I think they're doing it for personal gain and not for America's gain, and that sucks.
You think Elon Musk endorsing Donald Trump is for personal gain? I mean, honestly, come on. That's the most ballsy thing that Elon Musk could have done, is say he endorsed Donald Trump. The man also bought Twitter, now X, so that he could make it a truly free speech friendly platform. He's lost money. Obviously, the people on the left who used to celebrate Elon Musk are now going after him. Same thing with RFK Jr., same thing with Tulsi Gabbard. In my opinion, the most courageous thing that you can do as somebody who's a member of the mainstream is say you support Donald Trump. I haven't heard anybody put out there that supporting Donald Trump, if you're a mainstream public figure, is helpful to you or your brand.
I'll give
don't
you
think
the
so at
argument.
all.
I'll give you the argument on Elon. Why this is not a ballsy move is the Democrats are going to support EV subsidies no matter what. They're going to support continued space exploration with his technology
Well, yeah,
no
they
matter
need him
what.
because they got the
So-
two astronauts stuck up there, and
I mean,
they
for
need
real.
they need him to
For
go
real,
save them.
which goes back actually to the Obama administration and some of our defunding of NASA. And so we should have a conversation. Do we support NASA? Should our taxpayer dollars
Well,
support
probably not,
space
because they can't
exploration?
even get their
Should
people
there
home.
be? Well, right now, because we've defunded a lot of NASA.
Oh, I don't think that's
So-
the issue. I don't think that the average American wouldn't be like, if we just gave NASA and Boeing more money, then maybe we
Boeing.
could get our people home, but no,
Isn't
they
it
have.
troubling? Boeing used to be Kansas. I mean, I was born in Wichita, Kansas. Boeing is an American company that should exude greatness. Why right now are we having so many problems with Boeing? Like another thing that I want to see American manufacturing be great. And so, I would love if Boeing and NASA actually invested in great American manufacturing that could get our people home, because the Russians have it. It's ridiculous that we don't.
Agreed on that. I do want to dive into a little bit of the RFK and Tulsi stuff with you.
Yeah.
But first, I want to talk about Carville, who, he actually has been objectively a voice of reason throughout this election, criticizing, of course, Joe Biden. He's had a few maybe slight criticisms of Kamala, but now he's going after RFK Jr. because of the Trump endorsement. And this is what he had to say.
I really feel sorry for the Kennedy family, because I'm going to remind them, you can pick your friends, you can't pick your relatives. And if Bobby Kennedy lived in a more humane country, they would have him in a nice rubber room and, 3 hots in a cot and take care of this guy. He has no business being out on the street mixing and mingling with people.
Do you agree that RFK Jr. should be in a mental facility or a rubber cell?
No, he doesn't need to be in a mental facility or a rubber cell. But here's what I would say. So Tulsi Gabbard is a get for Donald Trump. She used to be a very popular Democratic legislator, and I thought it was pretty disgusting that Hillary Clinton at the time said she was a Russian asset. She had been in our military. Robert Kennedy Jr., I mean, here's the thing about RFK Jr. He is a guy, really a troubled son of a famous politician who had issues with women, had issues with drugs, had some nefarious business deals, like weird stuff with Venezuela. I mean, in all other worlds, this is Hunter Biden. And then I wouldn't say I would want his endorsement if I was a Republican. In this world, for whatever reason, and I think it's a lot of skepticism of Big Pharma, which is deserved, he has caught wind and attention. And so now, for whatever reason, Donald Trump is cozying up to him. But I would have all sorts of questions about that guy's motives and his capability, and just the notion that this guy was so privileged, he didn't think there would be any consequences to him leaving a dead bear in Central Park. Like, that's just, it really is just weird. And I don't think he needs to be in a mental health facility, but I do think people need to talk about RFK Jr. and who he actually is, because it doesn't make any sense that Donald Trump would embrace him while having so many questions about Hunter Biden.
Agreed somewhat on that, but do you think it's a little rich for the Kennedy family? They've always stuck together through a lot of scandals. Do you think it's a little odd that the family would turn on RFK Jr. because of the Trump endorsement, given that family has banded together for generations to support some maybe scandalous behavior of other family members?
It wasn't even just the Trump endorsement, though. They had come out long before this and said, that they had concerns about his candidacy when he was running as a Democrat.
Joe, but they didn't
when
have
he was
an
running
issue
as
with
a
him.
Democrat.
Yeah, exactly, but they didn't have any issue with him before. I mean, they probably knew some of these bear stories and whatever else, and they didn't come out and say, oh, we want to distance ourselves. But as soon as he runs against Joe Biden, has the balls to take on Joe Biden, which so many Democrats did not, then now he's a pariah. I just think that's a little rich for the Kennedy family.
I think they've known his troubles for a really long time, but like many families, I hope if Hunter Biden was to run for office, we would be the first to be very public. Like, I hope that there would be some Bidens who would turn against Hunter Biden, maybe, we're living in that scenario. Certainly, if I know problems, I adore my family, but I do believe that America deserves the best and brightest. And if I had someone who was in my family, had the last name, thought that they could run with the last name, but literally had never held elected office, and I had all sorts of questions about, I would hope I would be honest enough to come out with my concerns. So look, the Kennedy family is kind of like a weird political tribe. I think I have all sorts of questions about like these weird political tribe dynasties. Like I'm kind of excited about some fresh blood because Kamala Harris is not from that. She's not even from California's political elite, which is crazy nepotistic. I mean, Nancy Pelosi is related to Gavin Newsom. It's wild. But Kamala Harris isn't from that. So I'm pretty excited about that. I love Hakeem Jeffries for the same reason. Fresh, new vision. I don't see that with RFK Jr. I don't know if this endorsement gets Trump over the line, but he is certainly embracing him very closely. I would say if I were advising him, I'd say Tulsi is the bigger get. Use her, not RFK Jr.
I don't disagree with that. I think Tulsi's a huge get, and I think that her on that stage with Kamala Harris, I mean, she effectively ended Kamala's first go at the presidency. So I think that that's going to be, if she is advising Donald Trump and he listens to her, which I think he needs to, I think that that debate's going to be really interesting. That's the last question I have for you. I think we've finally agreed on the debate. I know the Kamala team wanted notes and she wanted to be seated and she wanted the mics to be hot. I think they finally agreed to the original rules. What do you think we're going to see from the debate? And do you think that we're going to get a good look at the actual policies of these candidates?
I do hope that we get a good look on the policies of these candidates. The debate was not about whether to be seated or notes. She has said, and her campaign has said, they never tried for that. They wanted the mics on the whole time. And I don't understand why Trump wouldn't want this, because I actually want these candidates going back and forth with different ideas. There was, the problem, I'd say, with the CNN debate of many, including Joe Biden couldn't speak half the time, was that he, when you were trying to get some of the back and forth, every time it would go back to like Jake Tapper. I don't want to hear from Jake Tapper. He's not going to be president of the United States. I want to hear from Kamala Harris and I want to hear from Donald Trump. So if I were their campaign, I would want the mics on the entire time to allow that conversation without the media getting in the middle of that. We'll see, because I think they agreed in this sense with no mics, which is what it is. And hopefully it's the first of many.
Yeah, I think we're probably only going to get one, which is a disservice, in my opinion, to the American people. Swapped out a whole candidate, so we need to hear more from her. I'm just wondering if she'll need to have Tim there with her. I hope she can do this one on her own. I always appreciate your analysis and in the back and forth and the dialogue. I'll be watching tomorrow night for that CNN taped interview, and I hope that Tim Walz will be a great security blanket for Kamala, the badass woman who needs Tim. Thanks so much for joining me as always.
Good to see you, Tomi.
Talk to you soon. All right, folks, Zuckerberg might be apologizing for acquiescing to the Biden-Harris White House censorship demands, but I don't forgive him. It's time for final thoughts. So I'm circling back to what I think should be the bombshell news of the week, the Zuckerberg half-hearted apology for censoring Americans at the behest of Biden and Kamala Harris. In this letter to Congressman Jim Jordan, Zuck admits to censoring Americans, even for memes and jokes about COVID protocols, and vaccines, and also for helping to cover up and demote the very real Hunter Biden laptop from hell story on Facebook. Now, Facebook did all of this at the direct, and I mean very direct demand from the Biden-Harris administration, and I should know because I was a part of it. If you recall, the Biden-Harris team wanted my posts on the COVID vaccine to be buried and even suggested an algorithm change to replace my content with other content more favorable to the White House narrative. So yeah, thanks for the apology, Zuck, but it's too little too late. On the COVID part of it alone, I have to wonder how many people got this shot due to the COVID fear porn propaganda push and censorship of dissenting voices like mine. I mean, that has lifelong ramifications. And in terms of the Hunter Biden laptop from hell censorship, well, that no doubt impacted and interfered in the 2020 election. Ironically, that was the reason it was supposedly buried, because it would influence the election. But it wasn't Russian disinformation at all, and the FBI knew it. So nice of Zuckerberg to acknowledge this, but the damage has been done. Also important to note, the White House is not apologizing, and the White House is actually fighting for what it considers its right to keep this up, to continue to pressure social media companies to remove or monkey with content it doesn't like. Just imagine how much worse it would be under a Harris-Walz administration. We know how Tampon Tim feels about free speech.
I think we need to push back on this. There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
No. I will never forgive Zuckerberg for this, and you shouldn't either. Democrats are so entitled. Controlling mainstream media isn't enough. They want social media too. Thank goodness for Elon Musk and his purchase of X. Without him and without that move, who knows where we'd be. I wonder though, does this mean Meta will stop policing COVID commentary? I don't buy it. Sleep with one eye open, America, because we can't trust anyone anymore. Those are my final thoughts. Please be sure to tune in tomorrow live again at 1 p.m. Eastern. Also catch full episodes of this show on Fox Nation at your leisure. Also, please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. From Nashville, God bless and take care. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want more of my hottest takes, must-see conversations, and of course, my final thoughts, click here and make sure you subscribe here so you never miss a beat. I will be here every weekday, and I hope you'll join me.